Let's talk some Chiefs, guys. Welcome to Monday Morning with the Chief of the North on RGR Football. I am Seth Kaiser, the Chief of the North, and we're here to talk about the number one seed 2022-23 Kansas City Chiefs, who in a retooling year have managed to amass the best record in the AFC and yet again force the path through the Super Bowl to go through Arrowhead mostly. As most of you know, the Bills also won against the Patriots on Sunday, which means given a myriad of rule changes that were effectuated following the cancellation of the Bills Bengals game, the Chiefs Bills AFC Championship, which would be the only place those two would play, will be on a neutral field if that happens, and if they both win up to that point. I'm going to get to that in a little bit. The first things first, the Chiefs completely and utterly demolished the Raiders. That was fun to watch. It was one of the more, if not maybe the most complete performance by the Chiefs so far this season. They've had a couple of other really strong performances, against the Bucs, the 49ers. They've had other really good games. This was one where it really wasn't a contest, probably midway through the second quarter on. And it was very apparent early in the game that the two teams just weren't close. And one thing that I'm interested in terms of how that game against the Raiders went is the fact, well, there's two things that I thought made it sort of interesting to watch, at least from a Chiefs fan's perspective. One of them is that it was a three-phase performance. This season, the special teams have struggled a lot. They played well. And when the Chiefs special teams plays well, along with their offense, doing what their offense almost always does, and their defense plays well, you can kind of see how it becomes kind of an impossible problem for teams to deal with. And all they really need is all three phases to play very well for a half for them to really open up an extended lead and allow them to play the game the way they really want to play. So it was fun to watch. It was a good game. It was encouraging, and it was demonstrative of just how good the Chiefs are and how much a team, especially a team like the Raiders, which is an inferior team, but it's still a divisional opponent, a team that gave them a hard time the first time they played. It's just demonstrative of how difficult they can be to deal with when they don't get in their own way, which is something that we're going to be talking about a little bit. There's a couple more topics that I have this week, like we do every Monday. I try to talk about the things that I think are kind of some of the main storylines heading into the week, as well as a little bit about the game the previous day. And obviously this week, we have the playoffs to talk about. We're not going to have a game this upcoming Sunday. For 2 straight Sundays, the Chiefs won't be playing. They won't be playing Saturday either because they have the bye week. Gives them time to get healthy, to game plan for their 3 potential opponents, to really just rest. It's been a long season for the Chiefs, and their bye week was months ago. And so it was a well-earned respite for the Chiefs. It's a great thing to see. And so we're going to talk about a couple of topics here. The 1 seed, what the potential playoff matchups are for them following the bye week, how they kind of got to that 1 seed, some of the rule changes there. We'll cover that really quick. It's something that I wrote about in the Chief of the North newsletter. Then I just want to talk a little bit about playoff X factors. Make sure you, before we get going any farther, make sure you hit like, subscribe, do all those YouTube things here. They mean a lot more than you think in terms of making sure not just that you can follow the work here, but that you can support it. And it's, well, Seth, support it, but that doesn't cost me anything. Exactly. All right. So the 1 seed, the Chiefs sit atop the AFC. They have the bye week, of course, which is the most important advantage you can get in the NFL, because a bye week, I think people would view it a little bit differently if you viewed it as an automatic win, perhaps, because people are used to the term bye week. And so they view it as like, oh, you kind of get a week off. And you do. And those things are valuable, but you really need to think of it in terms of an automatic win in week 1 of the playoffs, making sure you only need to win 3 games to win a Super Bowl rather than 4. And that's an incredible advantage in the NFL where every game is maybe a weighted coin flip at best. It's especially true when you get into the playoffs and you have talented teams. There are no easy games, or at least they shouldn't be, in the playoffs. Last year's victory over the Steelers notwithstanding. So with that 1 seed, The way the way that the playoffs shook out, and it looks like this. And so you've got the Chiefs here. They've clinched division, home field advantage, and then Bills, Bengals, Jags, Chargers, Ravens, Dolphins. And then there's the NFC, but we're not going to worry about that until come Super Bowl time, Lord willing. so, so the potential matchups for the Chiefs are going to be, it's going to be essentially the lowest seed that emerges in the next round. It's one of the advantages, supposedly, of being the one seed, is that you get the easiest path to the playoffs in theory. So the matchups in the wild card weekend are going to be the Bills and the Dolphins, the Bengals and the Ravens, which is kind of an interesting thing for the Bengals. It's like the one sort of break that they've caught is that they're going to continually get the Ravens, who they're clearly the superior team, especially when the Ravens don't have Lamar Jackson. I know we're going to be hearing a lot this week about whether Lamar Jackson's going to play. That's obviously I want to say the tilting factor for the Bengals and Ravens. The Bengals ought to win either way, but whether or not the Ravens can give them a game is going to depend in large part on whether or not Lamar Jackson plays. And then, of course, you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, who got themselves into the playoffs with a Week 18 convincing win over the Titans, and they're going to be playing the Chargers. So the most likely scenario, if things go more or less chalk, as it were, is that the Chiefs will likely play the winner of Jags Chargers. That's assuming the Ravens or the Dolphins don't have some sort of upset. One of the things that I would just note in terms of any potential playoff matchup here is that there's really no easy out. The easiest out is probably the Ravens without Lamar Jackson. But really, the Dolphins, they've really floundered. But they don't. They've got a really dangerous offense. You never know. They're an offense that could put up 45, 50 points at any point. They're a dangerous team. The Ravens do have a great defense. And if Lamar Jackson plays, he can be an offense in and of himself. But, the Jags, the Chiefs beat them handily this year. The Chargers, they played them very close a couple of times, one of which was even without Joey Bosa. And so there's not really any easy outs in the playoffs this year. There's not going to be any easy games necessarily. If you were to ask me who would I rather the Chiefs play, for the Chiefs, it doesn't necessarily matter. If they play their A+ game, they win. But the opponent definitely determines whether or not an A performance can win, or B+, A-, all those things. They've beaten the Jags once this year. Lawrence is playing better now, and certainly a tough opponent. I'm thinking the Chargers, who consistently play them really tough, would be their toughest opponent. But we'll see kind of how everything shakes out. I'm definitely interested to see how the Bills perform against the Dolphins, who have beaten them once this year. And that kind of brings us to the one seed idea and some of the rule changes that have been effectuated. We don't need to go too deep in the weeds. Honestly, Bengals fans should probably be the most upset about anyone, because they lost a chance at the 2 seed, let alone the 1 seed, with everything that occurred. The Chiefs, on the other hand, their playoff fate returned to their own power with everything, which was a big deal. It also, and I actually wrote about the various advantages that came from the playoffs. And I kind of laid out, had the game been played, a draw actually would have been the best thing that could happen for the Chiefs, because the Chiefs, they held their fate as a 1 seed in their own hands. They didn't risk becoming a 3 seed or worse, because even if Cincinnati had beaten the Bills, which is what most of us are rooting for, then that gave Cincinnati an outside shot at stealing the 1 seed even. And so there are a few benefits that the Chiefs had. The biggest benefit that I don't think people talk about quite enough is the fact that the Chiefs now, because, and this isn't a benefit that they earned it by going 14-3. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do in the NFL. But one of the biggest benefits to being the 1 seed is you only have to play either the 2 seed or the 3 seed, with the way the playoffs kind of work out. The AFC is kind of considered a conference where it's, the Chiefs, Bengals, and Bills in some order, right, as the top team. Some people think it's the Bengals, some people think it's the Bills, some people think it's the Chiefs. But only having to play one of those 2 teams is a decided advantage, and that's where the Chiefs are at this year. And so, the home field advantage at Arrowhead thing, it's a big deal. But it's at the end of the day, the Chiefs being kind of handed back their own destiny in terms of getting the 1 seed, getting the bye week, especially. I guess I'll live with it. It's a little bit unfortunate because, of course, if they do what they are supposed to do and the Bills do what they're supposed to do, one thing that bums me out is that the Chiefs could have hosted the AFC Championship at Arrowhead for the 5th straight year. They already set a record by doing it 4 straight years. Kind of a cool little chance at history there. So we'll see how the playoffs play out. I am now going to be writing a series on playoff X factors on the Chief of the North newsletter for the next couple of weeks. As we get into playoff modes. And so part 1 is on Isaiah Pacheco and Kadarius Toney. As you can see here, it's actually been unlocked for everyone to read as I kind of go through why I think Toney and Pacheco are a couple of X factors. I cannot believe he scored on this play, honest to goodness. When you look at the vision that it takes to score here, right there. So when he hits this line of scrimmage, I'm sorry, I get distracted by Kadarius Toney because the edge defender does a great job setting the edge here and getting upfield. He can't pull all the way around to follow his blockers, to follow Juju and Kelsey outside like he wants to. So he has to, and I made sure to take a screenshot of it. So what he has to do is he has to cut up through here, which forces him to make a defender miss, but he's got to do it quickly enough to where the pursuit defenders can't catch up. It is a really, really tough play to score. And Toney made it look kind of easy. So if you want to check that out, the Chief North newsletter, it's unlocked. They're 2 of the X factors. Now, the biggest X factors for the playoffs for the Chiefs are going to be Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Chris Jones. Their superstar and their head coach. Those are obviously the most important factors. But what I want to do is kind of explore some of the other guys that I think could have an outsized impact. And one reason I started with Pacheco and Toney is because they were not guys who were around last year. They are guys who add something to the offense. And over the course of the season, Pacheco through earning more playing time and Toney obviously through a trade and then through getting healthy, they're adding an extra boost to the offense down the stretch here. And I think you could see it against the Raiders, even with relatively sparing touches still, what Toney adds to the offense in terms of explosiveness, creating yards, and versatility. It's a huge deal, and that even leaves out the fact that he has already shown himself to be a legitimate downfield threat for the Chiefs. Pacheco, on the other hand, he is a guy who has shown all year when he gets a chance that he can make teams pay for playing them a specific way. This is one of my favorite plays from Saturday against the Raiders. And not because it's a huge gain, it's just an 8-yard gain. But if you watch the way the linebackers and the safety move, once the ball is snapped, they don't really respect what they view as probably a play fake to Pacheco, thinking that it's going to be a quick throw to Smith-Schuster. And that gives Pacheco all that he needs. Whereas he's hitting the line of scrimmage, you see the linebackers here, they are not moving towards the line of scrimmage yet because they were worried about the pass. When the ball is snapped, you see that they either take a backwards or lateral step and they get caught flat-footed. Pacheco's a guy who can make teams pay for stuff like that. And that's going to be really important, as well as being able to run the ball in obvious running situations. It's going to be important for the playoffs. So they're the first 2 X factors that I talked about. There are multiple other guys in the pass rush, Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster, and a few other guys that I'm hoping to have time to write about here in the upcoming weeks, as well as an aspect of the team with regards to turnovers. I had a reader reach out, and I've got a pretty interesting article idea based on some of the information that he gave me, creating some very cool spreadsheets of turnovers prior to the Raiders game. And it's an interesting thing to see how the Chiefs stack up and how they've managed to win 14 games despite being real bad in the turnover realm. And I think that's going to be an X factor as well. All right, that's the time that we have for today. The Chiefs are the 1 seed. We get to relax during a bye week and just enjoy some NFL playoff football. It is, once again, a great week to be a Chiefs fan. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys Thursday for the mailbag.